resolution this year? Are you going to be one of the people that makes the gym really crowded during January and the first week or two of February, and then you're gone? The more I've done this podcast, I know more and more about the average user's steroid habits, because people are talking to me about what they're doing. There's a lot of people who go to the gym for the first time on steroids, as in like they've never been to the gym before. They don't know how to do weightlifting and they don't know how to do dieting. But that first day when they walked in the gym, they were on steroids. So that's not something that I encounter with people out of the blue. It's something most people aren't doing it, but it is something that I encounter on a regular basis. Pretty weird. Because just to let you guys know, the steroids manipulate what happens in response to the food you eat, what your body does with that food, and how you recover from your training, and how you're able to get stronger instead of just weakening yourself during your training and then your body getting back to its limit where it was before, but never surpassing that. That's the mechanism of action for the steroids. They don't just magically grow muscle on your body. They can cause muscle growth without diet and training to a very limited degree. It's not a linear thing where if you're not doing your training right and you're not doing your diet right, then you can just take a bunch of steroids and still get super big and super strong anyways. You actually can take as many steroids as you want, and if the diet and training isn't set, then all those steroids really won't do anything. Beyond, and I'm saying, you're not natural, and it's not your first cycle. If you're natural or it's your first cycle, you will see results just from using steroids without dieting or training. But after that, no. So the questions for the podcast today, I took these from Instagram. About 2 weeks ago, I put up a bodybuilder in Thailand on Instagram. That's the Instagram that I normally use. I put up a question where people could submit questions for the podcast. I'm in Asia right now, for anyone who's asking. So I'm going to go over some of those, okay? So Fit Matt. I'm not going to say the exact names, okay, of the people who asked them. I'll just say something, say something familiar with their name so they know who they are, but none of you guys else do. So he says, what are all of the ways to prevent prostate inflammation on gear? This is a huge one. This is a huge one that most people who use steroids experience this side effect, but they're not aware that anyone else is experiencing that side effect, prostate inflammation, because no one talks about it. And it's also considered a side effect that it's like, well, I don't give a fuck about that, because if you're a young guy, you've never even noticed or felt your prostate. You don't even know what it's doing in you. Yeah, I mean, it basically doesn't even exist to you. You've never had a problem with it yet. But there will be the outlier who never has a problem with it. But most people, almost everyone who uses steroids, notices things happening with their prostate. There can be a pinching feeling. There can be a swollen feeling. There can be a weak urine stream or a hard time getting the urine to start going. There can be a lot of different problems. And it's super annoying, especially if it gets really bad and you have a really, really enlarged prostate, which usually happens from really high dose use of anabolics, like steroid abuse. Definitely is one of the things that will cause wild hypertrophy of the prostate. The Olympic competitors that were using testosterone and D-bol back in the 1950s used to not be able to urinate because they had grown their prostates so big that there was no way, there was no urethra canal anymore. It was just shut, so they couldn't urinate. They had to have a catheter inserted up their dick every time they needed to go pee. That was to be able to compete at the Olympics that they were involved in. That there was no AIs yet, because that's another thing, is that when the estrogen gets high, it sensitizes the prostate to DHT. DHT itself doesn't really bother the prostate that much, unless it has estrogen too. And once it's got estrogen and DHT in the prostate, that's when you've got a problem, and it gets really swollen and big. Like one of the indicators for should I take my AI is, is my prostate normal or not? And yeah, if you're thinking about like, how can I make sure that I don't end up with a grapefruit prostate where I'm having to wake up 3 times every single night or more and urinate, and it's like fucking my life up, because that's eventually what happens with it. That's like the end stage, which isn't that hard to get to if you're a normal bodybuilder. And so the best things that you can do is not just doing like wild steroid abuse. So like grams of steroids. Testosterone is a huge offender. Trenbolone can also be an offender, but testosterone probably the number one offender because it's estrogen and DHT producing. And so guys that are running like 3,000 milligrams plus testosterone per week, I mean, they're going to have huge prostates. That's how it goes. That hormone grows that organ. So there's that, and then you got to take care of the estrogen, and the other ones that can really bother it are proviron and masteron. Proviron, masteron, testosterone, trenbolone, Dianabol, because it's really estrogenic. Those are probably the main ones that bother people's prostates, but testosterone, Dianabol, masteron, proviron are probably the most potent steroids in the prostate. Most people can run 25 milligrams per day of proviron, or 50 milligrams every other day of masteron without prostate problem. But when you up the doses from those, like you up it to 50 milligrams or 75 milligrams proviron, or 100 milligrams or 150 milligrams every other day with the masteron, then there's more of prostate irritation, deep cystic acne, stuff like that. So those are prostate. That's pretty much it. And if your prostate gets fucked up, the first thing you got to do is you got to take your AI to get your estrogen under control, and then you got to get the testosterone levels in your system down. So if you're on cycel, you should not take any more testosterone shots until it's down, if you need to get your prostate unswollen. That's one that I really need to go over, because it's such a prevalent side effect among people, but no one talks about it. No one knows anyone else is having to go through that, and it can be really stressful if you're not a 21-year-old dude who gets a little swelling in his prostate. Well, okay, that's when you're 21, that might be what you get, but when you're older, you could have a really huge problem on your hands. So I think that the prostate is one that all the more experienced guys who have used gear for like 10 years or more, they're going to tell you, like, this is one to watch out for. This is one to really take care of. All right, let's get another question. Arnold asks, how can you tell your gear is real? Do you trust Roid Test? So Roid Test is good, and it works. It's made by Bill Llewellyn, and it works with Bill's review of the product. So, like, the colors that the Roid Test says that it's going to come out as when you like test the hormone, and it's going to cause a chemical reaction to produce certain colors to tell you if it's real or not, those don't come out, even if it's legit. It usually doesn't come out exactly on the same color as they say, and it might even be closer to like a color for a different hormone. And so it's really hard to read those. But if you send the results to Bill Llewellyn, who made the kits, he does know how to interpret it. So if you use the Roid Test kit, I would do it, but then I would get in touch with the guy who made the kit and send him an email of the pictures, because I've seen colors that were way off where guys were like, okay, my shit's bunk. And then I was like, well, let me just, check with Bill. He made the test, so let me see, And so I'd send him the pictures or something, and then he'd come back saying, oh, this is an extra extreme potency version of Anavar. It's not bunk, and it's not fake or something else. It's actually the wrong color because it was too potent. So that's the thing. That's the thing with those tests. But in general, how do you know if gear is real? Normally, gear will let you know if it's real or not in a week. I don't think that's a hard rule, but that's about the way it is. Like your first testosterone cycle, within 1 week, you'll definitely see like an enhanced weight on the scale and a water balance change in your body, and you'll probably feel estrogen too. And that's how you'll know, like, oh, my testosterone's legit, because you'll start getting bloated, gaining weight, and feel estrogen side effects. And so, yeah, testosterone's real. Each hormone has its different way of feeling, where you develop a feel for it if you've used it a lot, where you know what it feels like. Growth hormone kicks in 15 minutes after the first shot. You can feel it. Like test suspension or testosterone propionate, and some orals taking larger dosages can make you really hot. And that's another sign that is real. You're getting really hot, developing like steroid flu. Definitely that's a reaction to your body saying, whoa, too many androgens, and trying to heat up your whole body and kill it. So you get a steroid flu or testosterone flu, trenbolone flu. Tren flu is usually pretty bad. It actually feels like you have the flu for sure, a pretty bad case of it for 10 to 14 days. A lot of people get this for the first week or two every single time they start trenbolone again, after they can have run it in the past, stopped it, and now they run it again, and they're going to get tren flu again. Pretty common. What else? How else can you tell that things are legit? Well, you get. It's one thing if you're on really strong stuff. So like if you're on tren, it's going to be impossible for you to tell, like, oh, is my Winstrol legit? Is my Anavar legit? Is my Primobolan legit? Because you're on something else that's way stronger than those hormones, and it's just like overshadowing it, covering it up. So you won't be able to notice those. But generally, if you're not on a roid that's covering up weaker roids, then within 1 week, you're either bigger or there's more shape to your muscles, and like you can recover better when you're training. And you really notice that, because before it was like, oh, okay, with these weights, I can do 2 sets or 3 sets, and then I'm like fucking done. And it's going to take me a long time to recover from that, to be able to replicate that effort. But once the steroids are in and they're kicked in, it's like, man, the next time you come to the gym, it's like I can do double the volume I could do before, and I don't get tired. I'm actually like not even tired after that. The amount, so say before, let's just say an example. For 3-plate bench press, you can do 3 reps, and those 3 reps fucking kill you. They take everything out of you, okay? For 1 set. Let's say that was that. So now let's say you had a cycle that just kicked in, and your gear's real. About like 1 to 2 weeks later, normally, you're going to go into the gym, and it's going to be like, oh, well, now you can do 3 sets of 3 instead of 1 set of 3, and you could still do more if you wanted to after you were completed with that. Whereas before, once you had done just that 1 set of 3, you were so torn up and you needed to recover that it was like the rest of the gym session was almost just a waste. So that's what it feels like. That's how different it feels training when you're on steroids. Training on steroids is way more fun than not training on steroids, because for one thing, the body will not adapt past a certain point. So you'll be making strength gains up to a certain point, and then there'll be a point that you reach, like with natural, where you feel like, yeah, like I'm ripping myself apart. Like I'm going to get injured if I keep doing this. And so basically what's happening is you've reached like a ceiling, and every time you do a performance of that ceiling effort that you have, that top effort, which like for this example was 315 for 1 set of 3. Every time you do that, that's taking your maximum performance now for like the next 5 to 10 days and reducing it lower, not to where it was. And then when you finally do recover, you're only getting back to being able to do that performance again, but not being able to do more. So the steroids changed this situation where now it is a situation of like, okay, well, now you do have enough hormones in your blood to like super compensate. And instead of when you do that maximum effort going down and then just making it back up to where you were, being able to perform that maximum effort but not super compensating and being able to do something better next time, the steroids is what makes that change. And that's why you see guys, guys on steroids are way bigger than guys not on steroids. Pretty much because of that, because the body can now handle way more training. It can handle way more volume. There's no way a natural can compete with the kind of weightlifting performance that steroid users do in the gym. The amount of sets with like 80% of your max that a steroid user can do in comparison to natural, it's not possible. So your natural self cannot compete with your enhanced self at weightlifting. It's not possible mostly because of energy storage. The energy storage effects of steroids are extreme. All right, I don't know. That was kind of way off topic from how can you tell if your gear is real. Zephyr asks, growth hormone dose on cruise. Can you still grow with growth hormone on cruise? Yeah, well, so growth hormone is a really effective nutrient partitioner. It really does a lot for keeping food out of where you don't want it and then making food the top priority where it goes when you eat it. Be athletics, muscles, stuff like that. Okay, so it makes it so that you can keep on gaining weight and that weight will be muscle on less gear. You don't have to use as much gear, and when you gain weight, it will block you from gaining fat. And you can still get bigger. It also increases your androgen receptors, the amount of androgen receptors that you have. So then your gear is stronger. A lower milligram amount of steroids is now more powerful because you have more receptors for those steroids to act on once you're running growth hormone. So growth hormone is a way to make use of lower steroid doses. That's one of the effects of growth hormone. Lower steroid doses become more powerful. But don't get confused on that, like being like, oh, well, that means that IFBB pros only take 500 milligrams per week. Okay, so don't take what I'm saying and turn it into something ridiculous, because that's not. You look at their bodies, that's obviously science. That's obviously chemicals. Anyone in their right mind who hadn't been talked out of their own basic instincts and logic will know immediately that's drugs. And people do know that's drugs, except for maybe the amateur bodybuilder who's, had all this shat put inside of his brain. and now even though he's the bodybuilder, he's the one who can't know who's natural or not. That's another thing that I've noticed, is that there are some, half the bodybuilders, once they take the steroids, they can be like, yeah, he's on steroids, he's not on steroids, he's on steroids, he's not on steroids. And the other half, it doesn't do anything for them. They're like still completely, mesmerized by fake naturals. And they'll go years and years on steroids, talking about how, I don't know, man, I think he is natural, about some natural that they worshipped before they were on steroids, who's still bigger than them years after them being on steroids. It's almost like a Stockholm syndrome or something. Their abuser, they now feel a need to please and look up to their abuser, or they have a need for their abuser, a need for him to be natural, and it's going to be very psychologically disturbing. It's going to really require rewiring of their brain to change what they're saying, that this guy they think is natural. Uh, and I swear, doing this, you guys, it's like a real psychology exercise. Listening to like all the different bodybuilders, because you know what they say about the gym is like the gym is a fucking zoo. The personalities in the gym, it's not like your normal cross section of personalities. You know, you're getting like more extreme people and more weird people, and so you get all this crazy steroid behavior. It's pretty funny. It's pretty funny. Um, Okay, Ollie asks, do I need to run Caber with Superdrol? Forums say Superdrol causes prolactin gyno. That's not usual. There is a minority of people who experience that, just like there is a minority of people who experience estrogen effects from Anadrol, but Anadrol doesn't aromatize. And so you have to go, well, why? How? And it also doesn't even connect to the androgen receptor. So you're like, what the fuck? This is a steroid that's working outside of the mechanism of action of all the other steroids. But for some people, they do have a estrogen receptor that's built slightly different, and the Anadrol can directly connect and stimulate estrogen effects to that estrogen receptor. There's not a prolactin effect from I'm going to say from Anadrol. From Anadrol, there's no prolactin effect from Anadrol. It's an estrogen effect. And so if you get that, and AI isn't going to do anything because you're not having any aromatase activity happening here. This hormone can't go from DHT to estrogen, which Anadrol is a DHT. So if you're having Anadrol gyno, the answer is Nolvadex, because you need to block the receptor. Stopping the conversion process isn't going to do a damn thing because there's nothing converting. There's just a hormone that you're putting in your mouth that's then going and attaching to your nipple and exerting an estrogen effect there, kind of like a selective androgen receptor modulator effect or selective estrogen receptor modulator effect in certain tissues. So that's the thing with Anadrol gyno, and then Superdrol gyno. Some people do seem to get a prolactin gyno from that, and it's not an unheard of thing. I've read it on the forums too. I don't experience it myself. I don't get any kind of prolactin or any kind of estrogen, no effects like that, zero from Superdrol, but I know people who do. And yeah, so that person is going to have to use a little bit of Caber if they experience that. But it's not a thing where like the Superdrol is going to be in so hard and then so hard to get out of your system that you're going to need Cabergolin or else you're going to get gyno. If you start getting gyno from taking Superdrol, all you have to do is just drop the tablets and it's out of your system in 2 days. Really kind of like one day. And then, over the next 48 hours or so, your side effects are going to drop off. So you got to catch it early, of course. You can't just let it like be gyno and then stop. You have to, right when you notice it, you got to stop. But if you did that, there should be no gyno problems in it. Normally no one is going to have a gyno problem on Superdrol. But for the unlucky, if you're one of the unlucky guys who does, then you can just drop it. It's out fast enough. You don't need to use Cabergolin or like have it on hand to use Superdrol. and it's rare enough too, like with Anadrol and Superdrol, that I wouldn't go into the cycle taking precautions. It would be something I would do, if it came up. For you guys that are listening on the live stream, could you give it a thumbs up, please? Okay, the next question, Gabe asks, what caused the change in Ramy's abs over the last 10 years? Good question. So Ramy, if you look at pictures of him when he won the New York Pro versus now in his Olympia ring, he's just a mess. Like his whole body is a mess in comparison to what it looked like before. It looks like what happens to all the other bodybuilders that are taking too much drugs for too long. It falls apart. So one of the things is when you have your IGF-1 levels too high, IGF-1 just makes things grow, and there's not really a lot of control of it. And when it's in really high doses, it just makes things grow. And you'll notice like in the earlier pictures of Ramy, between his muscles, there was more division or like deeper cuts, like in the abs too. The abs is a really specific spot to look at on Ramy, is that the cuts were deeper in his abs before, and now the cuts are like pretty much gone, so that he doesn't even like have abs anymore. It's some kind of weird looking thing. And that's because the IGF-1 was too high for too long. So that means growth hormone, that means insulin, and that means injectable IGF-1 being used at, too high doses for too long. And then, so now you're getting hyperplasia, so new muscle cells being added on to the muscle. So it's not just the muscle and the muscle's shape getting bigger. You can now change the shape of the muscle. And that muscle is adding on to itself. So with this kind of crazy uncontrolled growth like this, you can get growth in these abdominal muscle, not just on the six-pack area, but between the actual blocks of abs can grow too now, because it's you got all this IGF-1 and the growth has to go somewhere. You see this a lot with these guys that really look like, just totally insulined out, is you'll see over the years, their muscles become less striated and less detailed and more overgrown, where it just becomes like one big block. They're just one big block of muscle. And it almost looks like styrofoam, like a big styrofoam block. It's drug abuse, and drug abuse, it destroys your health, the way your physique looks. It's going to kill you early. This kind of extreme drug abuse of like open men's bodybuilding is absolutely not something to aspire to or to like look up to it, because it's not fun to shorten your life by 50%. That's not something to look up to. And it's not even good looking. It's pretty ugly. Classic physique is the best division now. Like really, who wants to look like those people that were up there on the Open Olympia stage? And I didn't think I would be saying this. I've always been a fan of heavyweight bodybuilding, but I'm just looking with my eyes and just saying what I think. And is that the open bodybuilding is disgusting now. It's disgusting because drug abuse on such an extreme scale is not pleasing. No one likes that. There are some muscle, a lot of bodybuilders have muscle dysmorphia, and so they can kind of like it. But if everybody could decide to bring the bodybuilding back to classic physique, Chris Bumstead looked the best out of anyone at the Mr. Olympia. And like Hadi Choopan is Mr. Olympia. Well, that's cool. I mean, he looked great. But Chris Bumstead is like the Mr. Olympia that everyone wants to look like, that everyone wants to be like. That everybody's like, man, I wish I had his physique. There's not a lot of people being like, I wish I had Hadi's physique. But there is some, and that would be cool. It would be cool to be so fucking jacked, like that. But when you learn what this shit is doing to your health, when it's used in such abusive dosages required to make that kind of a human body that is completely fucking unnatural, when you start to learn actually about what's going on, because the normal bodybuilder mindset is that I don't want to know what's going on. I'm going to use these drugs and I'm going to use them until my goals are reached. And in the meantime, I don't want to look at any blood work or any health markers. I don't want to look at it and I don't want to know about it, because no matter what the results are, it won't change anything. I'm doing what I'm going to do. That's a common self-destructive mindset of many, many bodybuilders, probably the majority. So they just don't even know that the steroids are bad. They might start off like taking the steroids and be like, I'm okay. I heard this was going to kill me, and so I'm okay. Look at me now. I'm on, 600 test and 50 milligrams Winstrol per day. I'm fucking strong. I'm looking better. And everything, right? So when you first start taking it, it's like you've heard all this crap that's not true propaganda about like how it's like the worst heroin on earth or something, taking steroids, and then you start to take it and you're like, oh, this is not like they said it was, and it's not. But if you get up to like really extreme abuse, like IFBB open abuse, and you, what is it doing? What is it doing inside of you? Find out what health problems you have too on cycle, and then, see what maintaining those kind of health problems, what kind of problems they lead to. I've been in the hospital a few times, and bodybuilding has been involved in that. And once you've been there, it's the last fucking thing on earth you want to go through. It's the last thing on earth you want to go through. Because it's just, once you're in there, it's just like, fuck. And you just wish that you didn't have to be in there, that you could go back and you could change something and you wouldn't have to be in there. But there's nothing you can do. You already laid your bed, and now you have to go through this because you made your choices. That's what it's like. That's what it's like. So that's why I'm saying this stuff, because it's really important to know what's going on. Doing the I'm going in blind approach is not the way to do it. All right, let's bring up another question here from the YouTube. Bodybuilder in Thailand on the YouTube, or not from the YouTube, from the Instagram. Bodybuilder in Thailand on Instagram. That's where these questions are coming from. All right, let's look at this one. Typical ancillaries for women on cycle. All right, yeah. So for women, here's the thing. If you start using male hormones, you're going to have like biological transition going on from female to more male, like or like from feminine to more masculine. That's going to be happening if you choose to take steroids, which are male hormones, as a female. It's also the same if you're a male who chooses to take that. It's still feminizing you. Your body is becoming less masculine and more feminized. That's basic logic. So it doesn't matter how much you're using. If you're taking birth control and you're a man, you're taking female hormones, just a little bit. Well, you're still on the spectrum moving that way. You're not moving towards the manly side, okay? Same thing with the steroids with the women. Most of the women, they want to go to the gym because the main thing they're looking for is to get like a real hard body. So like skin on their stomach where it's kind of like your forearm skin. That popular, they want to grow their bottom. So you can achieve these goals without steroids as a woman, and you can even use PEDs to help you. But if I was a woman and those were my goals, I would leave that as a last resort. Or if you wanted to be like more aggressive, something you used for a limited amount of time before contests only, and other than that you weren't using it. But time on exposure, as far as masculinizing side effects, dose, time of exposure, type of hormone, those are probably the most significant factors when side effects are considered for females. Thyroid hormones, which speed up your metabolism, growth hormone, which burns fat, which partitions nutrients into muscle, clenbuterol, which is a very effective thermogenic and fat burner. Thyroid, clenbuterol, growth hormone. This is good for a lot of women. This is good, and it's a good way to start, especially if because what I've learned from helping people is that a lot of women, their boyfriends just start giving them steroids. They don't know anything about, like, the boyfriend doesn't know anything about steroids. He just knows they help him grow muscle and they help him accomplish his gym goals. And he's like, oh, okay, well, here, you take a little bit, because since you're going to the gym too, and you just take a little bit, I'll take more. This happens, and it's no good, man. Especially not when you're dealing with females, because it's like very hard to reverse those effects if they don't want them. So be careful with that. If you're one of the guys that are giving your girlfriend gear, um, you don't want to use anything other than low dose Anavar, low dose Primobolan, low dose NPP, low dose Equipoise, and I'm talking less than 100 milligrams of each of those, and that's being aggressive. 100 milligrams of any of those per week would be pretty high dose. Yeah, females don't need big dosages. Ancillaries, a lot of times I ask females if they're not to start running birth control because they have a hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis, and it's affected when they take steroids, and usually they lose their periods. And as you know, having your hormones be right is totally important and necessary for your mental well-being. So if a woman has started using steroids and her own hormones are not right, her estrogen, progesterone are not right, she's not having her period anymore, she's generally going to feel like shit. And you can fix this by putting them, or if the woman is on birth control, it will fix the problem. Okay, so they can then have a situation where they still have the correct levels of female hormones instead of some fucked up levels of female hormones with male hormones. Now they have the correct female hormones plus adding the male hormones. So in conclusion, I would say that the best ancillary for women using steroids is birth control. All right, let's get another question. Porpastad says, how long should I wait to start the gear? Been training for 1 year, but want more results. All right, so you've got to know how to make gains with your training and gains with your diet. Because when you get on the steroids, if you don't know those yet, it's going to boost you past one plateau. And then you won't get any bigger after that. So it'll be like you get on the steroids, they bust your plateau, and then you can't make any more gains after that. And it feels like the only thing you can do is just, fucking slam all the juice into you to get you to break into the plateau again. And gains aren't the way that you're looking for. I have to remind myself this question. So he's been training for 1 year. So what you've got to do is you've got to know programs or how to program weightlifting routines that are going to increase your strength and good. They're good at that. And once you've experienced that naturally, and you're like, okay, so now I know how to lift weights. I know how to make progress with the weights. And you're confident in your ability to make progress with the weights. That's probably a time that you could then add in hormones if you wanted to. Before that, I wouldn't, because I think they would be hurting your progress by giving you a shortcut past essential fundamentals that you're then going to have to go back to in order to keep making progress with this thing that you just added. It doesn't make sense. I think a year is short, but you could start using probably the minimum possible amount of time where you could say, you could sign off on it and be like, yeah, okay, that it's a good plan. Probably 1 year is the absolute limit that a person could train, and it could be a good plan to use steroids. If they really knew their shit after that 1 year, because they were so fucking into it. Normally, I don't recommend it. I didn't start using steroids until I'd been 7 years. 7 years natural. Then I started using steroids. All right, T-Split. Thoughts on Liver King controversy. So this was, we were talking about fake naturals, and, I was saying like half the people don't want to know or something, even after they're on steroids, that their natural hero or whatever was taking steroids, even though they're bigger than them 5 years after, and he's still natural, but you're on steroids now, but you still believe him that he's natural. this is how the thing was with Liver King. It was like, what the fuck? Like when I first saw this guy, it was like, oh man, he's on everything. Like he is on fucking everything, a lot. And he's a science experiment. Look at his body. Okay, that's not what natural people look like, and that's what I've been telling you guys since the beginning of the contest. When you guys are like, and okay, like it's maybe some people just don't they don't have that sense so much, but you know, when you look at Liver King's body, there's an instinct in 90% of people that can say he's on drugs. You don't even have to be a weightlifter. You just look at the body and you know that's not what natural humans look like. And so you could do that with Liver King from the time that he first started coming out. And you could be like, oh, okay, well, this guy is, his body is just full of drugs. And he has a daily regimen of filling his body up with drugs. And this is the result. I know that that's the result of doing something like that. So when this thing came out, it didn't surprise me at all. I mean, I didn't even blink an eye. I was just like, yeah. So I guess all you guys that were fucking, you know, just believing another fucking liar or something, I guess that now that sucks because you have to like grieve about it or something, that, you know, you trusted someone and they were lying to you. I don't know. Another thing that I've noticed with like the internet is everybody who's trying to like show like, look how great my life is, and look how rich I am, and look how much success I have, and these cool worldly items like cars and shit that I have, and all these babes who want to get at me, and you know they're trying to create this kind of an online persona about how cool they are and superior. These people always are out to screw you, man. Always. Just if you get on the internet a little bit and you start watching stuff, you notice a pattern. Whenever anybody wants to convince you of how great or cool their life is, or how superior they are, or how cool, trendy, and hip, this person is going to, you know, the chances of that going along with a person who's going to try and, you know, pull some kind of dishonest, funny business, it goes hand in hand a lot of times. Doesn't fool me. Man, some of these questions, they need to. It looks like it's from Google Translate or something. Dylan asks, can you mix test E and test prop yourself like a personalized sustanon? Yeah, you can. And a lot of people do that. So they'll take an underneath dosage of long-acting testosterone, like testosterone and anthate, and that will be running underneath, like that's there, right? So they're doing like, you could say like 350 milligrams or 375 milligrams testosterone and anthate per week. And then go, okay, well now I'm taking 100 milligrams propionate every day on top of that. And that, I mean, that you would be able to get a sustanon like that. You know, you don't have to always mix in the syringe, which you can do. You can mix the test E and the test prop in the same syringe, but you don't have to do that. You could also create a sustanon effect just by having that long-acting testosterone level, keeping a steady level from taking 2 enanthate shots per week, and then spiking it up every day when you want, like with the test prop for, you know, like pre-workout or in the morning or whatever, because test prop gives you a lot of energy. It's more, so test E is not really like very much a mental drug, but test prop is a very mental drug. So yeah, a lot of people like test prop. And just to remind you guys too, test prop that doesn't cause crazy pain and inflammation is 50 milligrams per milliliter. If it's higher than that, it's going to be a problem. Okay, Joe asks, why do so many people tout low-dose cycles? Is it genetics or complete bullshit? Okay, so you want to take low-dose cycles if you can. And another thing is that once you've put on a lot of muscle, you don't have to take so much steroids in order to keep that muscle. So like, you're not going to look the same way that you did when you were on the steroids, but you'll still keep the bulk of that muscle. So it's not going to be like, oh, your shoulders and your delts and you know, and your traps are all just like popping up all over the place, like 3D and shit. It's not going to look like that, but the person is still going to look very dense and very muscular. They're just not going to look like, oh, that's a drug body. It's going to look a little bit more natural while being really big. Not so much separation. You're not necessarily going to think first thing that's a drug body. On like a TRT after you've done cycel, but you know, you can maintain if you're like an average guy. So let's say like 5'10", 180 centimeters, 100 kilograms, 220 pounds, and you're pretty damn muscular. You know, you could probably go down to 200 to 250 milligrams testosterone for cruise and stay on that for maybe 8 weeks without losing any muscle tissue, maybe even 12 or even a little bit longer. It really depends. But the main effect is just going to be that your muscles go into hibernation mode. They're not, the actual tissue isn't going to leave. They're going to look a lot different. But once you add the drug back in, it's like, boom, within 1 week, it's back to how it was before. So that's why I call it hibernation. So it's like guys who have been using steroids for a long time and they've built up a ton of muscles from being on steroids for a long time. They don't have to use as high of dosages in order to maintain what they've built. Okay? So, but if they do look really freaky for, you know, looking like they're on drugs, they do have drugs in their blood at that moment, but they don't have to use it all the time. Low dose, again, low dose, if you can, you want to use low dose because, you know, it's less harmful. And the main thing with the steroids that you got to worry about is the circulatory system, so the heart. That's what's killing, you know, bodybuilders. That's where bodybuilders have problems. You got to worry about the heart. So the more higher doses, the more stress, you know, being big, having a high blood pressure, having water retention, the steroids being a stimulant and making your heart slam harder and faster. There's a lot of things where the steroids are having an effect on the heart. And so the more you take, the more, you know, problems you can have. And the really bad one is if the heart gets thick or if the heart itself grows into a mega heart. Those are both like really horrible situations where now you're fucked. But the heart can atrophy. It can, if it's big, it can come down in size. And left ventricular hypertrophy also can atrophy. So you're not 100% fucked. There's nothing you can do about it if you get one of those conditions. You still can work with it and get, you know, work to try and heal it. And, you know, completely discontinuing the anabolics is going to be something that would be necessary for that. But then there's a couple of drugs too that can help you not have your heart grow, and help not have left ventricular hypertrophy happen. So Nebivolol, telmisartan. There's a few others too. But yeah, high dose use is definitely a reality for, you know, most of these guys. You know, just to answer the question, you know, you're saying, you know, is high dose good or bad or what? You know, is it really what they're doing or is it just genetics? It's not genetics. They are using high dose. You know, the doses that you see everybody on the internet using and then posting what they look like. You know, that's not what these guys are using. Yes, these guys have better bodybuilding genetics than the guys you see on the internet for the most part, but you just have to keep very basic, okay? And don't let yourself get into these mind spinning things where someone can start twisting you up with your mind, okay? Look at the body. Is that a body that is using a lot of drugs, or is it not? Because it's going to tell you. If you really can't though, then you should come hang out with me or something. I can teach you. We can go watching together. We can sit outside a gym or something. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. I think I'm gonna get to one more question here because my phone that's recording this right now is low battery. Okay, Absolute says, is Anavar safe to run year round at 50 milligrams a day? It's not going to kill you. I can tell you that. Most people could get away with that a year on 50 milligrams of Anavar. It certainly wouldn't kill them. But that's not a good idea. That's not a good idea because it's for one thing, it's going to make your cholesterol bad. And if you're eating a lot of carbohydrates and you're eating a lot of food of your veins, and when the veins have that inflammation inside of them, the cholesterol sticks to it and forms a plaque, which then shortens or it decreases the circumference of the flowing space inside the vein for blood and everything. So that's what's happening when you have a bad cholesterol and you're eating a lot of carbohydrates. So doing that all year, taking Anavar is going to kill your cholesterol. And then you probably want to get bigger and be strong, so you're eating carbohydrates too. Does that sound like a good thing to do? Not at all. Especially when, again, we're talking about what is the thing, what's the killer for bodybuilders? It's their hearts. So, no, you don't want to use orals year round because, for one thing, it's just putting a stress on your liver and it adds up after months. It's not a bad, an extreme stress or anything like that, but your liver is just not going to be 100% happy, okay? And then on top of that, you're stimulating this really bad cholesterol, which all oral steroids do that. The only one that doesn't is proviron, because it's a different chemical structure. And then being like, okay, well, now year round, I'm going to have this thing happening where I'm potentially narrowing my veins and arteries. That's not a good idea. So that's the reason why, like I say, testosterone is really good if you're going to run high doses and you want to get big, because testosterone in most people does not do bad cholesterol. It does not have a liver stress. It doesn't have these toxicity problems. It's a natural hormone. You just have really high levels of it. But it's not an inherently toxic chemical. So it's very good. It's cheap. It works. It makes you bigger and stronger. And it's healthiest. It's the healthiest one. And then the next lowest risk ones are DECA, Primobolan, Equipoise, and Masteron's okay too. And those ones will make your cholesterol a little worse, but usually you can fix it if you take like 2 or 3 tablespoons of psyllium husk fiber per day, and do cardio for an hour a day. So those do kind of have like a negative effect on cholesterol, and then when you eat a lot of glucose, it causes inflammation in the veins, and the cholesterol sticks to the veins. So they do cause some bad cholesterol, those other injectables, but it's nowhere near the amount that the orals do, where it's like, okay, well, there's nothing you can do about this. Like, you just have a bad cholesterol and you have to deal with this right now. So I wouldn't support any orals being used year round, but if a person was using like 500 milligrams testosterone, 500 milligrams DECA, and they just never came off, they would be, if that started as a normal, healthy person, he wouldn't be having acute damage to his health during that. Like, you could take his blood work at any time during the cycle and it would look okay. The only, now you're kind of, it's like, okay, now you don't have any more toxic chemicals in your system, but now you're talking about, getting big, using chemicals that help you get big. and have growth effects. So you could kind of still worry, about your organs a little bit. And then, like the side effects of being really big, which, having a heavier BMI, a larger BMI is associated with increased mortality. So the bigger you get, the more increased chance there is for dying. It doesn't matter if it's muscle or fat or whatever. But yeah, so if you do, this is the reason why test DECA, growth hormone, insulin. That's the most popular thing that's going on right now, as far as and has been for a long time, as far as like what bodybuilders do in the off season, what powerlifters do in the off season, etc. I mean, it's tried and true. It's been that way since 50s, 60s, 70s, long time. Yeah, that's what I think about that. Thanks for tuning into the podcast today, guys. I enjoyed it. Get back on here soon and talk to you again. If you want to chat with me on the phone, 60-minute phone call consult, you can inquire about that at steroidspodcast@gmail.com. Send me an email. And then also I do private 1 month daily text messaging with people. So if if you're interested in that too, email me at steroidspodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget to pick up your copy of Ultimate Guide to Roids, the #1 ebook on bodybuilding. Not walking on eggshells to not offend. Ultimate Guide to Roids gives you the keys to the Lamborghini. It's a crime this information has been suppressed for this long. Ultimate Guide to Roids, you can find that on my website, bodybuilderinthailand.com. There's also a website for this podcast with like more detailed rundown on the episodes called steroidspodcast.com. See you guys next time.